We will be in the book of James once again this morning. James. We're going to be throughout the book, but we're going to start in the first chapter with verse 26. We've been walking through the book of James to see what the message is for us about our faith and how our faith needs to be alive in our lifestyle and in our actions. And so we looked at how we can find pure joy, even in hardships, trials, and temptations, if we will allow our faith to let us see what good God can do in the hardships of our life. We looked at faith and deeds and how the two can't be pitted against each other. It's not faith or deeds, but it's faith and deeds. Because when we have faith in God, it will show itself as we do good works in the lives of others. And last week, we looked at wisdom, that skill of life. Being able to live life in a skilled and orderly manner that pleases God. And how the world has its own version of what wisdom is. But godly wisdom, wisdom from heaven, is a life centered on Christ and centered on honoring God. This morning we're going to look at another area of our lives where James sees in his wisdom how faith doesn't always line up with our actions. How faith doesn't always come out and line up with what we say and what we do. And so we will be in James starting off with chapter 1, verse 26. Those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. There was a man working in a produce department, and he was asked by a lady if he would be willing to take a head of lettuce and cut it in half and sell her half of the head of lettuce. And his first initial thought was, God grows these things in full heads and we sell them in full heads. And so there's no way that I'm going to cut this thing in half to give you half of it. But she insisted, "You mean after all the years that I have spent shopping here, you are unwilling to sell me a half a head instead of a full head?" And he said, "Hey, it's not my call, but I am willing to go talk to my manager and see if my manager will be willing to do that for you." And so he began trotting up to the front of the store to look for his manager. And as he noticed his manager, he said, "You won't believe this, but there's this lame-brained idiot of a woman who wants to see if she can buy half a head of lettuce." And the manager just looked terrified as he gestured that she had been following him up the entire time. And so he turned around and looked at her and he said, "And this nice lady would like to buy the other half." Later on in the day, the manager cornered the young man and said, "You are quick on your feet. That was good thinking. Where did you learn how to recover from ill words like that?" And he said, "Well, I have to tell you a story about where I'm from. I'm from Grand Rapids. And the only thing Grand Rapids is known for is hockey teams and ugly women." And again, the manager seemed terrified. And he said, "My wife is from Grand Rapids." And he quickly said, "Well, what hockey team did she play for?"
Wow.
We have to be careful of how we use our tongues. By extension, the speech that comes out of our mouths. That James says if we consider ourselves religious, and if we don't want that religion to be worthless in the eyes of God, we had better have a tight rein on what we say. The tongue is a test of somebody's true religion. Now, I know that religion is one of those words that's gained a negative connotation. Even religious people don't want to be called religious anymore, right? Like, no, it's not about religion, it's about relationship. And I hear people say it over and over again. But if we understand what religion means, there's no reason for us to have backlash against the word. Religion simply means the practice of religious beliefs, a ritual observance of faith. So religion and being religious, it's always stood for the outward observance of an inward conviction. And so it's right up James' alley to talk about religion, right? Remember, his message is that faith has to not only be in our head and our heart, but in our hands. And so he tells people, be religious. Let your outside observances shine for the glory of God. Not just in your hearts and in your minds, but live out your faith. At the core, religion simply means living out what we believe.
Yeah.
And so I am a religious person, and I'm okay with that. Hopefully we are all okay being religious people. But if we are more concerned with going through the motions of religion and the rituals and not living out a life that honors God, then our religion becomes false and our religion becomes worthless and not honoring to God. It is this empty, this dead religion that has left such a bad taste in the mouth of the world. That when the world thinks of religious or religion or people that are religious, they think of people and how sometimes we can be hypocrites, right? Sometimes we will say one thing and do another. Sometimes our actions don't line up with what we say we are supposed to be about. And so this life of love, this life of sacrifice, is not always seen in the religious practices that we have day in and day out. And here's one of the easiest ways for us to line up our life with our faith. It is to put a rein on our tongue, to watch our speech, to see what words we're going to speak and speak them carefully and intentionally and not just throw them out there, never to be brought back again. Those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. It's no longer God-honoring. See, it's not a secret that James holds the tongue, and by extension our language and our words, in such a high standard. As a wise person skilled in living, he is aware of the caution that we have to take. If we take on the name of God and the name of Christ, we have to be careful with the way that we speak and the way that our speech affects others, because it will also affect our own lives. And he says that the tongue has the ability to control the entire body. He lays out the dangers of the tongue by explaining how our tongue can control the course of our lives. And so in James chapter 3, verses 3 through 4, when we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. It's by their mouth that we are turning the animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they are so large and driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. It's not the massive sails and it's not the blowing winds, it's the small rudder that controls the ship. Same thing with our tongue and our speech. But it's not only that it has the ability to set the course of our lives. It's not only that James is aware of, but he's aware of the destruction that can come from a tongue. And so he warns that tongues are like a destruction, or the destruction that comes by fire. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by such a small spark. A tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body. It sets the whole course of one's life on fire. And it is in itself set on fire by hell. You consider what James is saying here. He's saying that our tongues have a lot of power in them. Mm-hmm. And that power can be used for ill. And it often is used by ill. Like a small spark that starts this rapid fire. If you know anything about wildfires and forest fires, they move so fast that they can run anybody down. The destruction is so widespread sometimes. It can cover miles of territory in what seems like no time, burning things to a crisp. It's uncontrollable. And once it gets started, it's so hard to put it out. The same thing with our words. A lot of people have seen the object lesson about pouring out a tube of toothpaste and trying to put the toothpaste back in. And it just never works. The same thing is with our hurtful and harmful and deceptive words. Once they're out there, we can never take them back. We can never put them back in. So we had better be careful on how we view our tongue and how we use our tongue. Otherwise, we all run the risk of our religious practices and our faith in honoring God to be worthless and not valued. And so James, throughout the book, he doesn't just hit on one topic here and explain the whole thing. He scatters it out throughout the entire book. And so he points out some specific examples in the ways that we abuse our tongues and we abuse the language and speech that comes out of them. First, he talks about praising and cursing. James 3, verses 9 through 10. With the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, This should not be. This would have been especially piercing to the Jews. Devout and dedicated Jews, whenever somebody would invoke the name of God, their instant reply would be, "Blessed be the Lord. Blessed be God." And they would say it every time. It's like going to Chick-fil-A and saying, "Thank you, my privilege." And you say it 10 times and you hear, "My privilege." But if you were a devout Jew and somebody said, "God," or "I'm going to worship God," or "Bless God," your response would automatically be, "Bless God." So how many times throughout the day would they bless God with their lips? Bless God with their lips. The pious and extremely devoted Jews would make a commitment to say 3 times daily, to repeat the 18 eulogies or the prayers. And every prayer started with the words, "Blessed be my God. Blessed be my God." And so if they follow through with their commitment, no less than 54 times throughout the day would they be blessing God with their lips. Once again, James highlights the human tendency, the tendency of mankind to be double-minded, to not always say and do what they should say and do, or what they say they believe in their hearts. He brings to the attention of how people in their convictions and their beliefs does not quite come out of their mouth the same way. The same people who are filled with reverent blessings for God at the drop of a hat are cursing others who are in the image of God. Knowing the power of the tongue, already having laid out how everybody should be cautious with their speech and their tongue, he tells us that we cannot have these inconsistencies in our speech. If we bear the name of Christ, if we take on the name of God and we become Christ's ambassadors, then our speech should be God-honoring as well. He says salt water and clear water cannot come out of the same mouth, the same way that cursing and blessings cannot come out of the same mouth. We will either speak life to people or we will speak death to people, but we cannot have inconsistencies in our speech. It is true that some words are life-giving. Some words are encouraging. Some words give hope. They reveal the truth. They set people free. And yet some words are like a poison to people's lives. It tears them down. It promotes destruction. It leads people astray. Which one will we be? James says if we bear the name of God, if we bear the name of Christ, we will speak life to people. It is never right, nor will it ever be right, to bless God and lift up our life-giving words and lift up our praises and our prayers with the most elegant and reverent speech, and then turn around and tear somebody down with the same mouth and the same tongue. We think of cursing. Cursing just refers to pronouncing misfortune for someone else. We wish misfortune on them. We want some kind of destruction to happen. It's the expression of a wish that misfortune or evil or doom will befall a group or people. And if you look up cursing, the verb of curse, it is to swear at or to afflict somebody harm with our words. So it is the intention behind the words to do harm to somebody. And it's speaking to someone. When we are cursing someone, we are speaking to them and we are harming them. And it's not always what we think of the cuss words, which, words, cuss words. It's any word that we spill out of our mouths that is intended to harm somebody. I used to tell my brothers used to tell me actually that they would beat the living snot out of me. And it seems harmless, but at the time, I knew that they were picking a fight with me. And when we said that, it was intended for harm. Yeah. And something that had no cuss words in it, Mom and Dad heard it and they never got on to us for saying ill words or just simply call somebody, "You are so dumb." Right? There's no cuss word in there, but it definitely is a cursing of somebody. That's right. It's ill will and harm towards somebody's life. And we all know that these are simple and mild things that can be said compared to some of the things that we hear come out of people's mouths that are ill will towards others. The old saying goes, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me." But in my experience, sticks and stones may break my bones, but if somebody's hurtful words are said to me, it just might crush me. Yeah. It is so much harder to recover from ill words. words of destruction and decay than it is ever physical harm that has been happening to my body. And so we had better be careful with our speech. So many times people can speak perfect courtesy to strangers. They can preach love and gentleness and yet snap impatiently at those that they love. It's when we get close to the relationships, the people that we love. Often it's in our own families. That when we're in church, we can lift up these beautiful praises. We can sing the best songs. We can say the most reverent prayers. And yet with the people that we love the most, we become impatient and irritable. And we can snap at them with sharp words. Blessing and cursing out of the same mouth. This shall not be. James makes a tie to the focus of the image of God. He says, you're going to bless God and curse somebody in the image of God? It doesn't make sense. Because if you are blessing God, shouldn't you bless those who are made in the likeness of God? And if you are cursing those in the likeness of God, are you not cursing God? The two are equated with each other. And so we shall use our tongues to build others up. The greater choice in the practice for each and every one of us is not to look at the faults of others and find ways that we can curse them. If we wanted to find reasons that we don't like each other, or that something bugs us or rubs us the wrong way, or there's something that I just don't like about somebody, it's not hard. I could probably find something on everybody in here. And I'm sure that everybody could find something against me that they don't like too. Please don't curse me. It hurts my feelings. All right? We shouldn't curse anybody, though. Because if we dwell on those things that tear us apart, that's exactly what we'll do with our words. We will tear each other apart. But if we will dwell on the things that we have in common, specifically that you, and everybody in here is made in the likeness of God, that's a unifying thing. And we should use our words to build up that unity, to build up the potential that God has put in each and every one of us. And so cursing is a way that we use our tongues, we use our speech, and it does not honor God. But it doesn't stop there. He also talks about slandering one another. James chapter 4, verses 11. Brothers and sisters, do not slander one another. Anyone who speaks against a brother or sister or judges them speaks against the law and judges it. When you judge the law, you are not keeping it, but sitting in judgment on it. And there is only one lawgiver and judge, the one who is able to save and destroy. But you, who are you to judge your neighbor? Again, the same root word is found in James 5:9. Don't grumble against one another, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged. And the judge is standing at the door. Just notice real quick how both of these ill uses of the tongue, slandering and grumbling, immediately cause James to talk about judgment. That we are not only judging people when we slander and grumble against them, but that there is a judge who will judge us in return, right? He makes that tie almost immediately. And these two abuses of the tongue, they lay out how we slander each other, how we use our speech to come against each other. And the difference between cursing and slandering is that cursing happens to you. I'm going to curse you and it's going to be to your face, and I don't care if you hear it. But slandering and grumbling take place behind somebody's back. It's often the word that's used, translated for gossip. You see, slandering, when I slander somebody, when I want to defame somebody, it will often happen not in earshot of them, but it will happen in my little safe group with my friends, where I can show them the lack of love I have for somebody, and I can spread that lack of love, hopefully, to them, and I defame their character. It's the gossiping. Paul says, or James says, this malicious and false words should not come out of our mouths. So slander is the malicious, the false, the defamatory statements against others. And the fact is, it's used in accusing people. It's when we make judgments on somebody and we accuse them. And there is an accuser. We know him to be Satan. We call him the devil, and he uses his words to accuse us. And when we use our words to accuse others, you tell me who is controlling our tongue, who is controlling our speech when we are accusing and defaming others. So the key difference is when we gossip, we're doing it behind people's back. And the sin of slandering and defaming others is condemned throughout the Bible. Gossip is nowhere found in the Bible as a good thing, but it is consistently talked about something that shall not be among God's people, among the children of God. In the Psalms, the psalmist talks about a wicked person. He describes a wicked person like this: you sit and speak against your brother. You slander your own mother's son. And then the psalmist says he hears God saying, him who slanders his neighbor, secretly I will destroy. Paul also lists gossip and slandering among the characteristics of the unredeemed pagan world in which we have been called out of. So it's significant for us to realize that in both of these words, in all of the root word, the Greek word is katalalia, if I say that right, I don't know. But it is the sin of those who meet in corners and gather in little groups and pass on confidential tidbits of information that will destroy the good name of others. It's a lack of love in our hearts for somebody, and it's a spreading of that lack of love to others. In previous chapters, James had already laid out the law by which everybody should live. And in James, he calls it the royal law, which is to love your neighbor as yourself. And anybody who has fallen victim of a vicious rumor or lies against their character knows that it's something they don't want to happen often, right? It's something that's hard to recover from. And so if we don't want that to be done to us, and we want to live by the law of love, the royal law, we will not use our words against others either. When we grumble about what people have done, what we don't like about them, what we are really doing is spreading an unloving spirit. And then once again, that tie between slander and judgment is there. Although these passages are found in different spots, the reminder that judgment comes quickly behind them are in both places. And so we have to be about speaking life and not slandering or gossiping. But that's not it. We have cursing that shall not be. We have slandering and grumbling that shall not be. But he also talks about in James chapter 5 about taking oaths. And listen what he says and how he starts this off. Above all, my brothers and sisters, do not swear, not by heaven or by earth or anything else. All you need to say is a simple yes or no. Otherwise, you will be condemned. I like that when he says above all. It should make our ears open up a little bit to say, if he's talking about our speech, and he's already talked about how condemning our tongue can be and how powerful it is, when he says above all, I might want to take note of this. Above all, we shall not take oaths, but let our yes be yes and our no be no. It almost seems too simple for me to hear this, and I didn't even know what it meant for the longest time, except that I really love the Sermon on the Mount, and he is directly quoting the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. And what does that even mean? I found myself asking, what does it mean? I know what yes means, and I know what no means, but surely it means something more than what's on the surface. It's not a passage about knowing when to go forward with a yes and when to step back with a no. The passage is about when we say yes, we have to follow through with that yes. And when we say no, we have to follow through with that no. And James picks it up that our speech has to be the conduct of our lives. That we have to be people who live by our word. That when we say something, we have to have the integrity behind it to follow through with it. It's not enough just to say yes. Or it's not enough to say, yes, I swear to God. I swear to my mother's grave. I swear to my family. I swear to the closest person. I don't know about you, but when I hear somebody say that, I'm wondering why they have to sell this to me so bad. Right? I'll be there and I'll help and I swear and I swear and I swear and I swear. And I think, oh, they're never coming. They're never going to be there. Otherwise, they would just be able to say yes. And they would know in their hearts that they're going to follow through with that yes. That they're a person of their word. In the ancient world, there were a few problems with taking oaths. In the ancient world, there were two different kinds of oaths. There were the oaths that you took, and it was considered forever binding. And then there were the oaths that you took that weren't so binding. And it makes no sense, right? But the ones that were binding were the ones that invoked the name of God. That if I swear by the God of heavens that I will sell you this for a certain price. And what it meant was that God was now a partner in that transaction. That if we didn't follow through with that oath or that swear, then we were somehow making an offense against God. Okay, and then the other oaths, yes, I'll do it, I swear. And nobody ever followed through on it. And so all the oaths were being taken in the name of God. And then the other part was there were so many oaths taking place that it was really just a testament to how unrighteous and lying and manipulative people were with their speech. That no longer were people able to be trusted on their word. Does it sound familiar? Is it all that different from the ancient world as it is now in today's world? Because I'll tell you what, I think today I've got to have a contract in my back pocket for somebody to tell me something. I don't know if we can trust anybody's word. And we're taught not to trust their word. I mean, I'm going to have a contract with my wife for getting the dishes done sometimes. Because I tell her I'm going to do it. And then when the time comes, I didn't do it. Right? Something as simple as that. But James is saying, if we are believers in Christ, if we are people who honor God with our tongue and our speech, we will be people who can simply say yes. And our integrity in our lives will testify that that yes is enough to get the job done. That there is no longer a lapse in my integrity. I said I'll do it, and a yes is enough. There's no need for that contract. There's no need to hound me to get it done. I'm a man of my word. I learned a valuable lesson one year. My first summer job was mowing with my grandfather. He had retired and he enjoyed mowing very much, and he was really good at it. He had a reputation for making a yard look immaculate. And one summer he said, "Would you like to come and help me this summer do my mowing jobs?" All I saw was dollar signs, right? I mean, I was a young kid. I didn't think about the work. I didn't think about having to get up early. I just thought about getting paid. Yes, Grandpa, I'm going to do that. Well, come to find out, I was terrible at this. I really was not good. It was my first job, and I didn't have any work ethic. And not only that, but my grandfather was old school. I mean, real old school. There was no riding mower to be involved. It just didn't cut as good as the push mower. His old Murray cut better than all of them. And it wasn't that he would just, you start on the outside and you do a round all the way into the center. And I thought, we're done. But no, for him, that was just the beginning of going diagonal and making those nice little lines look good in the yard. And so I just didn't understand this. Why are we doing this again? And there was more than one time when we were mowing, and he would stand out on the road and look at this yard and decide that the neighbor's yard was too long to have his yard look good. And so for no charge and no payment, we would mow the neighbor's lawn, just so his lawn would look good. Now, I didn't understand it. It took me about 2 weeks before I said, I'm done. Grandpa, you're going to find another mower, because this ain't for me. I took my 2 weeks of pay, put it in my pocket, and went home. All was right in the world of Dave until my dad found out. Yeah. You know what happened? My dad just came and he said, "Did you tell your grandpa that you'd help out this summer?" "Yes." "And what, you don't like it?" "No." And he simply taught me that I could change my mind about that job. That I may not like it, I may not want to do it, but I will finish the work that I said I was going to do. Right. Because I was to be a man of my word. Some of the best lessons I've ever learned in my life came from that summer. Not only being a man of my word, but what it takes to be detailed in excellence in our work. What it means to follow through with what you say you're going to do. And I don't think the world teaches being men and women of our word the way that I learned that summer. Because so often our integrity and our actions are not followed through when we give our word. And so yes, It means more than just saying yes and going forward or no and backing up. It means that our lives, our integrity must line up with our speech. And James says, this tongue, the speech, the words that come out of it are so powerful, we cannot afford to say something and be people, men and women of God, and not do what we say. We cannot afford to not follow through with what our speech has already said. And so, he doesn't say be silent. He says we better tame it. We better be careful with the words that we speak and how we say it to others. And so silence is not the answer. In fact, James also talks about the proper use of the tongue. And in closing, I'm just going to share James chapter 5, verse 13 through 16, where he talks about some things we can do with our speech. Is anyone among you in trouble? Let them pray. Is anyone happy? Let them sing songs of praise. Is anyone among you sick? Let them call the elders of the church and pray over them and anoint them with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer offered in faith will make the sick person well. The Lord will raise them up. If they have sinned, they will be forgiven. Therefore, confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. And I got another slide where I've highlighted the words in there for the proper use of our tongue. If you see it, it's praise, it's prayer, and it's powerful. If we are going to be people of God, walking and living in the power of God, we had better use our tongues to pray and to praise and to show God's power with our words and with our tongues. It is the only use for our speech and our tongues. And so this morning, I don't know, when I read James, I get this feeling like I always fall short. You know, James is like the book where I get into hard times and trials and I don't see any joy in them. And James brings that out and says, let your faith show you the joy that can come from that. And sometimes I creep into that worldly wisdom where it's self-preservation and God's not always in the center of my decisions. I know definitely I fall into the spot where my words and my tongue do not always line up with the faith I profess in my life. And I'm teaching the kids and my family and I'm preaching and it's about the love of God and the joy of Christ and all of that. But then when I get home, sometimes it's hard to hang on to that in my lifestyle. And maybe you guys feel that same kind of tension. My flesh is always pulling me one way and my faith is pulling me the other. But my prayer is that we will be people who uses our tongue to praise God, to bless God, and to bless others. My prayer is that we will be praying people. And I love that we are a praying church, that that's the right use of our tongue and our speech. And this morning I pray that we think about all that James has told us about living our faith out. That our response this morning will be to come and pray at the altar of God. That we will be able to not only understand and believe, but to have a lifestyle of faith. So will you come this morning and